Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now, for today's video, I'm obviously going to be hitting the next of the weapons. And as you know, the weapon series which I'm making is part of your general builds. Now, unfortunately, right now, I'm in a bit of a tight situation in terms of my actual character and my ability to do any tasks. So, bear with me as I go through a few things here today before I even get started with the build. So in general, when it comes to builds, I have completed the sword, the great axe, the life staff. Now those are the three that are up that I have uploaded, and I think the ice gauntlet, yes, and the ice gauntlet. So just those are what are currently up. Now I'm only going to pair those that work well with the tank. So for different purposes, your tank has different formations. The pure shield build does help a lot because it can give you enough extra aggro if you play yourself in the right role, the right sequence. You can actually get a lot of extra aggro put onto your sword and shield, and that's just the reality of sword and shield as one of the weapons. But besides that, there, for any good tank, you always have to have a secondary assault. So your secondary assaults are always going to come from this or from the magic glass, as I've stated before. Actually, after learning a little bit more about the void glass, it might be one of the best to actually pair with the sword and shield. Now, I didn't personally use it. I had somebody who was helping me through a few adventures, and they were using the void gauntlet. It literally ripped a tank to shreds. That means that it is a very powerful item. It was good in the Garden of Genesis as well. I saw someone cast it in there, and man, does it do damage like I can't believe, because I tried the garden last night, didn't manage to complete it, obviously first try, and very inept for jumping in. So let's get into the next item on the list, the next weapon, and I am actually going to hit the spear. Now, I have started using the spear very recently, and I found that the spear really matches the tone of a primary weapon user in the form of a tank, for three particular reasons. Number one, it has a stun right on the impaler side. Number two, it has a render or a bleed effect, right, which is a fantastic one for you to have. Putting on bleeds on an enemy is going to help you as a tank, because you can just sit back while it's going to tick damage on them. Even if it's just 1% for 10 seconds, that's 10% extra damage. Oh no, it has 20%, so 200% weapon damage. That makes it a massive bleed overall, especially considering that my spear does over 1-1 at its full scale assault power. So 1-1 scaling up to 2 is 2200, makes a massive impact. And beyond that, we have perforate. Execute 3 quick impaling strikes that each deal 80% weapon damage and apply render, reducing the target's damage absorption by 5% for 10 seconds. So each of these are going to reduce it by 5% for 10 seconds. 5% reduction plus that massive bleed. You've got an incredible combination just with these two. And if you pair it up correctly, if you taunt gem compatible, if you have a Carnelian gem equipped in your spear, this ability inflicts taunt for 2 seconds while it is active. Taunt causes monsters to focus only on you. I did not know about the Carnelian gem effect on Vault Kick. I knew that it was effective to knock enemies into a stun. So yeah, here's something else which I didn't know, which makes it even better for the tank. If I change it out to a Carnelian gem, I'll reduce my damage, but I will increase my ability to hold taunt. That will mean I can jump to this, pull taunt to me, jump back to my shield, hold taunt with the shield, use both the taunts there, come back, use this skills again. Fantastic. Okay, now beyond all of that, let's get on to the part which makes it so good for DPS and for tanking. For tanking, as you can see, this is something which I myself had missed. I didn't realize that there was a Carnelian gem compatibility. Okay, so let's start off with Skewer. Skewer, push forward and skewer your target, dealing 125 weapon damage. Applying bleed, deals 20% weapon damage for every for 20% weapon damage for every 1 second for 10 seconds. Okay, let's see. Deadly Ambush. Skewer deals 20% increased damage against targets that have full health. So if you do this as your primary strike on them, you're gonna get a massive extra bonus of 40% damage. May seem like it's not that much, but it does actually help if you hit them with this, then you hit them with this, then you hit them with that, because you're going to pull down their health big time. You're going to knock out their defense by 5%, then you're going to stun them, which is going to make it even worse for them. And as this here bleeds them out, it's most probably going to increase well beyond 20% to that 200. It will be like 400%. Okay, let's see the next one. Gain Empowered if skewer critical hits, increasing damage by 20% for 10 seconds. Okay, so with this, right, it's going to increase skewer's damage, increasing damage by 20%, another 20%. That means a 60% damage increase. I'm not sure. It might be the primary strike does 20% more damage. This here might add on that 40% that I was talking about. I'm not 100% sure, and I think that counts as the weapon damage that it's going to tick off against. I'm not 100% on it, but you just have to try and figure it out as it goes through. And last but not least, we have Deep Wound. Bleeding duration increases to 15 seconds. Now this doesn't increase to 15 seconds, only this takes it up to 15 seconds. Just by skewering, you now have 15 seconds of so you got 100% extra damage, right? Sorry, I'm just going ahead of myself. 100% plus 400%, that's a 500% weapon damage across 15 seconds. If you're keeping up with me, this still doesn't match anything like the Ice Gauntlet or any of those crazy weapons, but it is so effective on enemies that it can actually make a big difference for boss battles in particular. Just pulling this out for a few seconds when guys have shockwave, skewered, the whole lot, and then you just go and you skewer on top of that, the boss will be bleeding buckets. An additional 5,000 coming off the boss makes a big difference, because they generally have pools of about 100 to 200,000 health. So yeah, there's a big thing here, and you can see just 4 skills. Next we have Perforate. Execute 3 quick jabs, applying rend, reducing the target's damage absorption by 5% for 10 seconds. Now if you are mixing these two together, this final figure becomes a bit crazy, because remember, you've reduced 5% of their damage absorption. That means that they're now going to take 5% extra damage. That means that you're effectively making them way weaker than they need to be. I know that in the Garden of Genesis, the first boss that I went up against, when I hit him with Perforate, his shield instantly broke. That's how strong Perforate was against him. The first hit did minimum, it was less than a quarter. The second hit did more than a third, and the last hit did more than a third, and he was literally broken instantly once that was over. They didn't even have to hit him a second time. Okay, Rupturing Strikes. Rend increases to 10% per strike against targets above 50% health. So if you start this off against a boss, you now have a 10% render, so they now 10% weaker. It's gonna pile on quickly. You're going to hit in that damage, and once they drop below 50%, obviously if you manage to put on a second one, you're helping your team big time. Target is staggered if you successfully land all 3 hits. Now the chances of you not hitting with all 3 are almost non-existent. This does not have any type of pushback as far as I can see. I haven't seen pushback as any of the skills granted, but yeah, there's it. It does a perfect shot, it does a lot of damage, and it staggers the enemies. Now obviously staggered enemies take extra damage. If you are doing that against regular enemies, it is a good way to clear ads, especially since they rendered and staggered as an additional 10% of damage to them. So if you pair these two up, as you can see, they're really going to pile on that damage to your enemy. Obviously right now you're just looking at it as 80% times 3, which is 160, no sorry, not 160, 240 damage plus 500, that's 740 damage. This weapon doesn't hit those crazy figures, but just wait until I give you the last one. Right, use the spear to vault forward, kick your target, dealing 75% weapon damage, applies stun for 1.5 seconds. Okay, I'm not going to go through the Taunt Gem story again. Gain empowered after successful hit on target below 50% health, increasing damage by 20% for 5 seconds. Now this is another critical input. If you increase your damage by 20% and you're going to put this on, remember that bleed is going to be insane, right? Remember, you've already hit them, your power just got empowered all of a sudden on them, so that little boost is now going to become a 60%. So 5 seconds is going to be at 60%, 5 seconds is going to be at 200%, and 5 seconds, sorry, wait, it's 600, 400, and 200. That's the stepping line as you go to the end, and that's just talking about halfway through this tree. There's still a lot to add to this power. Now if you're counting that up, that is going to add a massive amount. Another 5 at 20% is another 100. That's 600% to this. Adding in the renders 10%, 10% excess damage across 10 seconds is another 100% damage. That would make that 700%. Yeah, you're looking at 980 plus the small hit from here being 75. You already passed your 1000 mark basically. Cooldown for other spear abilities are reduced by 30 seconds by 30% on successful hit. Now look at that. That is 13. This is 13.8, and this is 11. If you take off 30% of that cooldown, just using 1, 2, and 3 in order, you literally have a very fast rinse repeat damage. And remember, this here is going to keep rendering them. And every time you put rend on them and rend on them and rend on them, if you have 3 or 4 rends applied to a single boss, can you imagine the damage output? If you started off at 20%, you've now doubled it to 400, 300, and this here will not stop bleeding them before you have cooldown with the correct landing of hits. A third of this time is a big difference to the time. It's more than a 4-second reduction. That means in less than 9 seconds, before the first part of the heavy bleed is done, you can put on a second one. And obviously it's above 50% for the starts, so that's going to blast right through them. As you can see, this is good for high impact enemies. Now let's talk about the special ability exploit weaknesses. Deal 10% bonus damage for each debuff on your target, max 30%. You can apply 2 of these instantly. This can be applied once, right? As you can see, you can apply how much of extra? 30% at max. So if your team has rendered and done everything already before you, a 30% buff to your damage, you're already looking at a crazy figure. 1000 plus 30% is 1300 DPS. 13 times what you would have put out with a single one. 13,000. And on top of that, you have faster cooldowns, and you can rinse and repeat. And because you're repeating so quickly, you can only imagine how much of damage you're going to apply. Now remember, this is with a team I'm talking about. This here will go insane. Now let's add the side skills. All spear ability cooldowns are reduced by 10% on the second hit of the light attack chain. So double hits with the light attack, there's it, instant 10% off the refresh. You now have a 40% reduction. Now 40% reduction makes it only 3 intervals to the maximum. That is a massive reduction to the time again, and you're really pulling it down, right? Obviously 10% on the second hit of light attack chain, and each time you apply it, second, if 3 of them come up to you, you're just going to instantly recharge. Basically 3 enemies, you get them too close together, if you pair it up with X user, you perforate them quickly, you render them, you hit them with your main attack, and then you just light, everything starts to recharge. You can just rinse and repeat even faster. You don't have that small 9 seconds to each hit, you have something like 7 seconds to each hit, and you can even make it smaller the faster you are with your combat. So yeah, that's one of the critical things. Finishing blow. Deal 15% increased damage against targets with less than 30% health. Now this is something which helps take up this effect over here. As you can see, full health gets you a 20% extra, so on the first one. And if you using this skill, you're now going to get even more. You're getting 15% in the end bar. That's a big thing. Remember, all of this is piling on together. You can really kill enemies super quickly. Aggressive maneuver. The first successful hit with an ability within 2 seconds of dodging reduces all spear cooldowns by 20%. Now if you can do this here, as you can see, 20% reduction plus 10% plus 30%, that is a 60% cooldown reduction, and that is no joke for anybody who knows how important it is in combat to be able to apply those massive DPS or damages. Okay, critical chance is increased by 15% when attacking a bleeding target. You have bleed right here, and this will now will have more of a critical chance by 15%. Plus you're stunning them at the end, so this has a higher chance of being critical. These become critical if you manage to land it right in the right sequence. If everything is sped up fast enough by you, you can actually apply an extra critical hit to it. That will mean that these will be really deadly. Now let's get to the other side. Precise jabs. Light attacks have a 5% increased critical chance, right? The last hit of the light attack chain applies a 30% slow for 3 seconds to target below 30% health. Slow reduces target movement speed. Means you now have a chance to increase that damage on them. More chance to hit a critical hit on them. 3 seconds is a long time in combat. Unerring precision. Deal 20% increased damage against targets with active grit. So the moment you see them turn white, that is grit, right? That glowing white on them, you do 20% increased damage against targets with active grit, making this fantastic for shield users, making this fantastic for weird attacks from defensive bosses. You now have this massive hit that's going to do a ton of damage. And last but not least, critical hits extend the duration of your spear debuffs and damage over time. Effects by 20%. 20% increase in time, right? Your spear abilities debuffs and damages over, right? You're extending the duration. Just extending the duration of this by 20% is a massive increase. 10% is 1.5 seconds. That's 3 seconds added to this. That's 18 seconds of skewer, right? And that is just for critical hits, and all of this increases critical hit chances. You're getting such a good critical hit, one critical hit, and now everything has extended durations. You are going to win on that path if you manage to do it. And if you backstab an enemy, this here is going to go through the roof. And this is just the Impaler part. Impaler is not the primary assault. It is an assistant to a tank, as you can see, because of this. Now let's go Zona. I'm not 100% with this, but let's go through it. Throw your spear, dealing 125% weapon damage and staggering on hit. So that's what you are doing. You're throwing your spear, you're staggering them. That is the end of story. That's all that there is to it. Now the other option over here is sweep the target's legs and deal 75% weapon damage, knocking them down. It's a bit of a stun maneuver basically. Cyclone. Spin attacks that deal 130% weapon damage, pushes targets back 3 meters and applies 50% slow for 3 seconds. So as you can see, these have pushback in them. They are a very effective weapon type, and that's the whole thing about them. Forceful impact. Targets are knocked down on hit. So the moment you use Javelin, targets are knocked down on the hit. Let's see what's the next one. Refreshing precision. Headshots reduce Javelin cooldown by 50%. A 50% cooldown on how big is this here? 13.8. That is a fantastic cooldown. Deadly distance. Javelin deals 2.5% bonus damage per meter traveled, max 100%. Per meter. Okay, so to get it to 100%, 2.5 times 40, you need to hit something that's 40 meters away from you. Well, so yeah, you can really improve it. It starts off with 125, that will double it basically, so 250%, but you have to be really far from the enemy. Okay, not bad. Okay, it's terrible to be honest. Sweep the target, deal 75% weapon damage and knocking them down. It's good for holding off airs. It's a crowd control, not a crowd dealing situation. Crit is now active during the attack. Crit prevents you from being staggered from incoming attacks. Not really that important. Coup de grace. Press basic attack during sweep to follow up with a heavy stab that deals 150% weapon damage. So 75 plus 100, that's 225 and 250. As you can see, it's not that big yet, but this one is going to make it a little bit bigger. Right, 130% weapon damage, pushes back 3 meters and applies 50% slow for 3 seconds. Restores 25 stamina per target hit. Grit is now active during the attack. Okay, I thought it had a multiplier on the Cyclone. I'm pretty sure it did have one. Deals 25% increased damage while stamina is full. As you can see, this is all about a primary assault. You're not really helping the team. You're not applying long-term damage. This is a lot lower on damage dealing, but it's good for holding off enemies. It's a short form detour on enemies. You can knock down weak enemies and you can run for a few seconds. That's the whole idea behind it, as far as I can tell. It's not really the most effective. It has small little bonuses here and there, but they're not really going to help you all that much. Deadly reach. Critical chance is increased by 10% when attacking targets that are at least 3 meters away. Dodging backwards consumes 20% less stamina for 2 seconds after a successful hit. Deal 25% increased damage against knockdown targets. Helps with the sweep. Don't understand why it would be such a big thing. Gain Fortify after successful heavy attacks. Increased damage absorption by 15% for 2 seconds. Deadly Consistency. Deal 10% increased damage on consecutive heavy attacks against a single target. Stacks up to 3 times. Sorry. Restore 20% stamina on critical hits. And last but not least, Strong Condition. Stamina regeneration rate is increased by 30% when your stamina is below 50%. So overall, this here is good for recovering stamina. Honestly, I can see a very good reason to stick with the Vault Kick and the Skewer. I don't see much of a reason for you to jump off the Skewer and use the Zoner type skills. They may be effective for something, but I don't see them being effective for too much. And that's just my honest opinion. I'm not 100% a master of it. There might be a purpose for Zoner. Zoner can basically be used to slow down ads, as far as I can tell. It's not effective for killing them like this side. As I said, this one here can have a 1300% damage. This one here, you're looking at 750 damage. It's standard, it matches all the other subclasses. Even the Exo has had that massive damage buff on the one side, which goes really crazy, 22 times damage multiplier from the Ice Gauntlet. The only other class which has such a low level standing would be the Sword, and the Sword is not meant for primary DPS. It's meant for you to use for defensive purposes, and that's its primary focus. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Next will be the Warhammer. No, next won't be the Warhammer. Next will be the Fire Staff, and then I'll go to the Warhammer. The Fire Staff was one of my primaries during one of the betas. I really enjoyed it in that time. So let's see how that goes when I talk about it. So yeah, that's going to be about it from this video. Catch you all in the next one, and have a good day.